everyone, it's Hannah and Kaylin back again with Double Talk. In early 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic came out of the blue and ambushed life as we knew it. In times like these, especially on the dawning of a new year and hopefully a new start, we all could benefit from a true hero's perspective. Meet Jason Redman, a retired Navy SEAL lieutenant, wounded warrior, veteran advocate, and New York Times best-selling author, who is here to share how his life experiences have taught him that it's not only possible to overcome adversity, but it's imperative. This has been a difficult year, to say the least, because even for families who've been able to avoid the virus itself or recover from it, there's still been massive job losses, and social isolation in itself is difficult for a lot of people. What can we do to make sure we're on the path to overcoming these obstacles as we enter a brand new year?
Great question. I think the biggest thing is you've got to control what you can. I think it gets very easy. It's human nature that we kind of have a tendency to focus on the negative and to focus on the isolation and to focus on obviously the anxiety and everything that's overwhelming in 2020. And there's also a natural tendency to stop doing the things that we really should be doing to take care of ourselves. So I always talk about what are the things that you're doing to move the needle in your life. Human beings, we feel good about being productive. And right now, there's a lot of people that are out of work. There's a lot of people that can't go to the gym, all these different things, which allows us to make excuses for why we can't do X, Y, or Z right now. But the reality is we need to do it even more in these high stress times. We need to do those things that move the needle. So at the end of the day, we go, well, despite the craziness, I still managed to check the box on this. I teach something called the rule of 3 Ps. And it's just it's an easy goal setting thing that you do every day that keeps you balanced. And it also makes sure you're moving the needle in your life. And the rule of 3 Ps is, one personal goal, one physical goal, and one professional goal every day. And these don't need to be big. So many people, when they start thinking about goals, they're like, oh, I want to be able to, whatever, run a marathon in under 3 hours, and they've never run before in their life. It's too big, start with running around the block or run to your mailbox. Whatever it is, we set small goals and those small goals add up to big wins. That's what moving the needle is. At the end of the day, you're like, man, even though it was a crazy day, even though hard things happen, I still knocked out my goal, the real rule of 3 Ps, and I feel good about myself. I can go to bed ready to tackle tomorrow.
You write about how you use your experience as a Navy SEAL lieutenant in your day-to-day life and your personal life as well these days. What would you say is the biggest difference between you before being a Navy SEAL lieutenant and now after? What's the biggest thing you've learned that you kind of carry with you?
So much. And what's interesting is a lot of what I learned as a SEAL translates over to the civilian world. I think there's a lot of people who will hear me speak and they're excited to hear a cool story. They've watched Lone Survivor. They've, read some of these great books that are out there by my teammates and other military members. And they think it's a cool story, but they also tell themselves, well, it's only a cool story. I can't relate to that. I may not be able to be a Navy SEAL. I may not be able to deal with that level of pain or whatever it is they think, that discomfort. But the reality is the principles are the same. Leadership is leadership, whether it occurs in the SEAL teams or whether it occurs in the civilian world. Whether you're a teacher or a doctor or a police officer or a businessman or a woman, it doesn't matter. Those principles are the same. And that's what's been so much fun about now that I'm out and taking a lot of these lessons and making them relatable to people. And the most fascinating thing, almost everything that I teach, I use in my own life because the military, one of the unique things about the military is a very structured organization. They tell you where to be, what uniform to wear, all these different things. We create what are called standard operating procedures. So the steps to get things done. And this is why the military is really effective. Well, the civilian world is not as structured as the military. As a matter of fact, a lot of parts of the civilian world, there's no structure whatsoever. So you have to create it within yourself. And I'll be honest, when I retired and got out of the military, that was hard for me for my entire adult life. 21 years of my adult life, I had been in an organization that pretty much gave me this perfect roadmap. And in the civilian world, you have to create your own. So all these things I started building for myself. The world moves at a little bit of slower pace, and there's nothing wrong with that. not quite as aggressive, and I'm not quite as aggressive as I used to be, obviously, when I was in the military and combat. And I think that's a good thing, and I enjoy that. And it's nice to be able to help other people to be the best versions of themselves through what I'm teaching.
What does it mean to move from defense to offense as a member of a SEAL team and as a person just going about their life?
It's a specifically when crises occur, this is where there's a big issue for most people. And let's take a step back for a second when we talk about that. I survived a pretty devastating enemy ambush. For anybody out there that doesn't know my story, in September of 2007, my team and I walked into a Al Qaeda ambush, and I was shot 8 times in that engagement between my body and body armor. 2 rounds in the left elbow that almost took my arm off. I took a round in the face that did massive amounts of damage, and barely survived. 4 years, 40 surgeries. That ambush, when the enemy starts shooting at you and pins you down on a specific location, in the military, we have a term for that. It's called the X. And when you get on the X, it's critical that you have to fight back. It's critical that you have to take very proactive action, which is exactly the opposite of what you want to do. When you are ambushed, whether it is a enemy battlefield, bullets and bombs ambush, or it is a life ambush, both incidents, people get stuck on that X. And it is human nature, if you don't have the training and the right mindset, to hunker down and to just kind of pray that this will go away. Like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. This is painful. Um, there's too much stimulus to try and figure out what to do. So many people kind of freeze in those initial moments, for minutes, hours, days, weeks, and and they don't know what to do. So they get defensive, they hunker down and they just kind of pray, well, if I can just hold my ground and just hold out long enough, maybe I'll just survive, or I'll just make it through to the other side of whatever this ambush is. In my career, I'd been taught you have to get off the X as quickly as possible. You cannot stay there. The longer you stay in the middle of that crisis, that ambush, that attack, that adversity, the more likely the chance is that you're just going to get bogged down. It's like quicksand. The more it'll pull you down and the harder it is to get up and drive forward. So that's why you have to go on the offense. In the military, we were taught you have to attack into it, or at least you have to blow through it. You got to get some momentum going. And those are all the things that I teach. Bad things are going to happen. It is an unfortunate part of being human. We would love for We'd love for it to be nothing but rainbows and unicorns all the time, but life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes we get smacked down pretty hard, and it's painful and it hurts when these things come along. But if you already have a mindset of, I don't care what happens to me, I'm going to get up and I'm going to drive forward. And yes, it's going to be hard, and sometimes it's going to be painful. And even though I don't want to, I'm going to do this. And that's what I try to teach. And that is this idea of going from defense to offense, so that you don't just lay there and wither, because you cannot win in a defensive posture. You have to be offensive. You have to get up and drive forward.
You told us before that in order to lead a group of other people, whether it's at work or in your personal life or anything else, you have to learn how to lead yourself, because that's really where it starts. What would you say to somebody who's having trouble figuring out how to begin leading themselves through the life that they want?
Leading yourself is it's a great principle. I teach 3 rules of leadership, like you ladies were talking about. It's lead yourself, lead others, lead always. And and leading yourself is just building some structure and discipline into your own life. And by doing that, it enables us to get things done. It enables us to drive forward. If we never have a plan, um, you're like a ship adrift in the sea. If you don't have a destination to go to, how are you ever going to figure out where you're going? You're just going to drift along, doing nothing. So leadership truly is identifying, this is where I want to go, and these are the steps that I'm going to use to get there. Self-leadership really does start with, who are you? What are your values? What do you believe in? And then how do you define your mission for life? And the great news about that, it also becomes our lighthouse when things go wrong, when the darkness sets in, and the storms are raging on us, and we're in the middle of a life ambush and we feel overwhelmed. we can look to our mission and say, okay, I know where to go because I've already set this.
For those of us, especially now during the pandemic, some of us are so used to always being around people and always being able to, whether it's at work or in our social lives, having other people around us to motivate us, to help change our perspectives. What would you say to somebody who is struggling with just the idea that things are different now because you're more isolated?
What do you have to do? You got to get creative. And I think there's a tendency sometimes for people to just accept, well, this is the way it is, and not start thinking outside of the box. How do we reconnect with people? How do we do things? There are a couple of different things that I'm actually releasing a planner in 2021. And one of the things that I talk about is gratitude. It's easy to focus. As a matter of fact, it's not even easy. It's human nature to focus on the negativity. It's human nature to say, oh, I can't go see my friends because of COVID. I can't go to the gym, or I can't do X, Y, and Z. And what we tend to neglect is the things that we actually do have. There are still great things that we have. I mean, for a lot of people out there, electricity, internet, all these different things that, I mean, if you go back to the global pandemic of 1918, they didn't have any of that. So, I mean, gratitude is this powerful thing that if you can take a step back and you think about that, you write down one thing you're grateful for every morning. Sometimes for me, it's my family, it's my home. I'm grateful for a warm shower because I've spent a lot of years of my life where I didn't get a warm shower. I'm grateful for a bed. I've slept on rocks and in the jungle before. I'm grateful for a hot cup of coffee. And then I also reach out to one person and send out a gratitude text, just somebody on your list that just maybe you haven't connected with them in a while. I can't tell you how often when I've sent these messages out that someone's written me back and said, oh my God, I cannot tell you how much I needed that. Like, I was really struggling. I've had this really hard week, and just to have this positive message, and it makes you feel good. So in times like this, choosing positivity over negativity, such a powerful thing.